You wake up on a Saturday morning with no obligations, no meetings, no deadlines. The whole weekend stretches out in front of you like an open field. And yet, by the time Sunday evening rolls around, you feel like you barely had a moment to breathe. You spent the weekend running errands, doing chores, meeting friends, and trying to relax. But somehow, you're more exhausted than when you started. You check the clock and wonder where all the hours went. The most puzzling part is that you actually had more free time than on a weekday, but it felt far more rushed. You tell yourself you just need better time management. You promise to plan your next weekend more carefully, but it never works. The same frantic rhythm returns. Why is that? Why does a day with no obligations feel so compressed? You assume it's because there's too much to do and not enough time. But the real answer is far stranger. It's not about time at all. Think about it. On a Monday, you have 8 hours of work, commute, meetings, and emails. On Saturday, you have none of that. Objectively, the weekend has more available clock hours. So why does it feel shorter? The problem isn't the quantity of time. It's your relationship to it. You've been trained to treat time as a resource to be optimized, a currency to be spent wisely. Your brain has learned that an empty calendar slot is an opportunity to be filled, not a space to be occupied. This pressure to make the most of your weekend creates a subtle but constant anxiety. You feel like you're failing if you don't have something to show for your 2 days off. This is a uniquely modern affliction. Your ancestors never once tried to maximize a weekend. They lived in a rhythm dictated by the sun and the seasons, not by a clock and a calendar. Their free time wasn't precious. It was just part of life. But you have inherited a brain built for scarcity, and now you apply that logic to your leisure. Neuroscientist and economist Dr. Mullainathan conducted influential research on what he calls the scarcity mindset. When you perceive a lack of something, whether it's money, food, or time, your mind narrows its focus to that specific shortage. This is called tunneling. You become hyper-efficient at solving the immediate scarcity, but you lose the ability to think long-term, plan ahead, or simply be present. Mullainathan found that this scarcity condition actually lowers your effective IQ by about 13 points. Now apply that to a weekend. You perceive a scarcity of free time, even if you have more of it, because you've been conditioned by the work week. The tunnel narrows your focus on the clock, making every minute feel urgent. You start frantically checking items off a mental to-do list. Clean the house, call your parents, hit the gym, read that book, go to that brunch. The very act of trying to make the most of time makes you feel more time poor. This is the scarcity trap. The more you try to optimize your leisure, the less leisure you actually experience. You become a manager of your own free time, rather than a participant in it. The research shows that this cognitive load reduces your enjoyment of the activities themselves. You're not having brunch. You're checking off brunch from a list. Your brain is so focused on the next task that it never lands in the present moment. That is why you end the weekend feeling like you ran a marathon without ever leaving the starting line. But it goes deeper than that. Dr. Ashley Whillans at Harvard Business School studies the concept of time affluence, the feeling that you have enough time to do what you want. She found that people who prioritize time over money report higher levels of happiness. Yet, in your modern culture, the opposite is actively reinforced. You're surrounded by messages that tell you to hustle, to be productive, to monetize your hobbies. A weekend of quiet reading or lying in the grass feels like a failure. This is not a natural human impulse. Anthropological studies of hunter-gatherer societies, like the Hadza in Tanzania, show that adults spend only about 3 to 5 hours a day on activities that could be called work. The rest of the time is spent resting, socializing, and playing. There is no concept of wasted time. The idea that leisure must be earned or optimized is a cultural invention, one that took hold during the Industrial Revolution. The clock became the master, and you have never fully escaped its rule. This cultural shift is relatively recent in human history, barely 200 years old. Your brain, which evolved over hundreds of thousands of years, has no dedicated module for weekend productivity. It only knows survival, rest, and social bonding. When you force it into a productivity mode on a Saturday, you're fighting against your own biology. Whillans' research also shows that the simple act of valuing your time, rather than your money, leads to greater life satisfaction. But you are taught the opposite from a young age. You are taught that time is money, and that equation is the root of your weekend exhaustion. Here's the truth that changes everything. The rush you feel on weekends isn't caused by a shortage of hours. It's caused by a conflict between your ancient brain and a modern cultural rule. Your brain evolved to conserve energy and avoid stress. But the modern world demands constant productivity and utility. When you have unstructured time, your brain interprets it as a threat to your social standing. Because in the ancestral environment, doing nothing could mean you were not contributing, and non-contribution could lead to ostracism from the tribe. But the tribe doesn't exist anymore. The threat is a ghost. You are biologically wired to feel anxious when you're not doing, but the doing you are compelled to do is arbitrary. The chores, the errands, the forced social events, they are a substitute for the very real survival pressures of the past. In reality, your body and mind need stillness. The pressure to fill every moment is a learned behavior, not a biological one. And the moment you recognize that, the grip of the weekend rush begins to loosen. You are not running late. You are running from an expectation that never had any real claim on you. Look at your Saturday morning again. You wake up and feel the pressure to start the day. You quickly scroll through social media and see friends posting about their hikes, their home renovations, their productive mornings. That sharp spike of inadequacy you feel, that's your brain misinterpreting their curated lives as a threat to your own status. You then make a list of everything you should do. You structure your free time like a work project. You prioritize the important activities over the pleasant ones. You end up cleaning your apartment not because it brings you joy, but because it feels productive. You meet your friends for brunch not because you want to connect, but because it's on the list. By Sunday evening, you realize you never actually rested. You spent the entire weekend managing a checklist of fun tasks, and the result is a profound dissatisfaction. You've replaced the natural rhythm of rest with a frantic race against an imaginary clock. Consider the feeling of a lazy Sunday afternoon that you allow yourself, guilt-free. Notice how different that feels. That is the signal of your biological truth. The rest of the time, you are ignoring it. You wake up on a Saturday morning with no obligations. The world outside is quiet. The sun is rising. And for a moment, there is nothing to do. The urge to jump up and start your day will come. The feeling that you need to fill the space will surface. But if you can just sit with that stillness, you might notice something. The rush isn't real. It's a story you've been told, and you have the power to let it go. So the next time the weekend arrives, try doing nothing. Not because you're lazy, but because you're finally paying attention to what your brain actually needs. Rest is not a reward. It is a requirement.